Genderlouge Walk the Talk, the much awaited session. This is in the interest of International Women's Day in March. We have decided to take this up topic, and we have three eminent speakers today who are lined up to discuss with you and to answer your questions. We start the session. Let me quickly run through the agenda, and then we'll be starting our session with the networking session, which will be run by Smita. We go through the welcome and introduction of the core team. Surya will be running through the values of L&D Global, followed by an important announcement by Smita. Then we have what we call a technology partner who provides us the technology platform. So we'll introduce today's technology partner, and then we start the topic of the day, the panel talk, followed by a Q&A and closing remarks by Divya. Over to you, Smita, to start the networking session.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to have you all today. And looking at a good number, and I'm sure there'll be more people joining in because there's been a lot of buzz going on around this, So, we have a lot to hear about the speakers as we move on, but we would really love to hear something about you all here. Annapurna, Sandra, Deepti, Aditi, Jyoti, Vasudev, all of you, please, anybody just pitch in and tell us something about yourself and, anything that you are looking forward to today. Annapurna, you've unmuted yourself. Go ahead.
Good morning, all. And of course, what brought me here is definitely the speakers. And all the three are my favorites. So I couldn't, resist myself. I rescheduled my day and I thought I should be with all the three of them. So thank you so much. And listening to them is always a pleasure. And of course, I should say apologies to Surya because I keeping on doing so many programs, but I don't come regularly. So Surya Bhaina, it is all my mistake. Thank you. Yes, I have been looking forward for the great day here. Thank you, Smita. Thank you so much.
Aditi, would you like to, anybody, Deepti, Vasudev, please go ahead. I can see you raise your hand. Abhipsha, Rashmita. You can all show us your lovely faces. Yeah, show us your lovely faces. I'm sure we all look, all of us are looking good on a Saturday morning. So no judgments here. So we're fine to see everybody. Yeah. Jyoti, hi. You were saying.
Hey, hi. Good morning, everyone. Very happy to see all of the speakers. I think when I joined the POSH committee, Nirmala Menon was the first session I had attended, way back, 10 years back something. And Neeraj, I just finished the interview with her for my podcast. So happy to be part of this L&D Global. Definitely a great place to network. Happy to be here, Smita.
Jyoti, you could tell us something about yourself too, since you're not showing your face to us.
I'm very bad. I've just got up from the bed and I'm still on the bed.
That's okay. Just tell us something. I'm sure Neeraja and Nirmala are able to place you, but something for the rest of us to remember you by also. Just tell us something.
So guys, I have been into people development role for last 20 years, been passionate and connecting on developing talent for the organization. And that's been my passion. And recently, last 2 years back, I've started podcasting and probably the first learning and development podcaster called Stars of Learning. So happy to initiated that, and around 50 plus countries are listening to my podcast, sitting in one corner of the Bangalore, which I have never traveled around. And that's the scale which podcast has helped me to reach thousands of people across.
Wonderful. I have seen some of your podcasts and they're really good. Thanks, Jyoti.
Yeah. And thanks to Surya to being my mentor, guiding me on the journey. So, and we began through first session with Surya's session. Yeah.
Thanks, Jyoti. Pranavesh, would you like to share something? Hi.
Hello, everyone. This is Pranavesh, and thank you, Surya, for a longer stint with L&D Global Meetup today. After a long time, Smita, I guess this
I know.
L&D Global Meetup is happening.
But we've been having it every month, actually. It's been going on for quite some time.
Yeah, Bangalore.
Bangalore.
But
Bangalore.
this is something we recollected after a long time.
Correct.
But Amit, I could see there. Amit, hi. How are you? So, hi Divya. Hi Surya. It's been a long time with L&D Global. Hi Keshav sir. Good morning. So this is I take care of the L&D Global Mumbai chapter, and we are doing something a lot of good work, and we're catering to the youth development. Okay, so if you go through our uh, YouTube channel called as Connect Talks, we're doing a lot of good initiatives there. So we are currently at the third season of the Battle of Great Minds, which is an initiative through L&D Global Mumbai and Connect Talks. I'll give you a small gist about what is L&D Global, the Battle of Great Minds. It is spread across in 4 phases. The first phase is the audition phase, where age group of 18 and 25, students of age group of 18 and 25 gives the auditions, passes through the auditions, and then there are top 20 finalists who have been shortlisted. Once these top 20 are finalists, they are divided into 4 groups. They are being mentored by some industry experts on specific genres. There are 5 genres. Each genre, each group will get mentored, and they'll give presentations on those those genres. After 5 presentations of the genres, one group will reach the final stage. On the top scoreboard, whoever has reached the top scoreboard will be the winner of the Battle of Great Minds season 3. So this is how we did season 2. I will just show you the trophy of the Battle of Great Minds season 2. This is my logo.
Amazing, Pranavesh. Thank you so much for sharing all this. I'm sure a lot of people will, show interest and get in touch. Word so that we can start with the session. Anyone?
Hi, Smita. Just
Hi,
a quick
Keshav.
word.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
the word is hello. And yeah, thanks for
Wonderful.
having us all
Wonderful.
here. And it's a bit of a late shout out, but I think it was nice that we could get some more people from our chapter. I hope they will join because I've just told them. But it's always a pleasure to link up with all of you, and let's look forward to the future. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Keshav.
Shweta, we have a few
Fatima,
people who have introduced themselves on the
yeah.
chat
Should we
group.
start? Should we start with the session then?
Okay.
Pratima, should we
Shall we get
start
started?
the session?
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Those who have shared and introduced themselves, we really appreciate you taking the time to letting us know who you are, and thank you for participating in our session today. Okay, so the next hold on. Okay, so I thought I'll quickly introduce the core team who work in the background to make these sessions happen month after month. Start right from setting up the topic, identifying the topics, identifying speakers, setting up the sessions, creating the poster. Ankita has been doing month after month a great job on creating the speakers, creating the posters that is shared in the social media. We have Surya as our fearless leader, Smita, Rangaraj Bhattacharya, Ankita, Navneeta, Divya, and myself as part of the core team. So I just wanted to bring out their names and let you know that these are the people who make this session happen on a month-to-month basis. Thank you all for all the work that you have been putting into these sessions. Moving on, the next topic is L&D Global Values by Surya Mohapatra. Surya is all of you know, he is our founder of of this forum, and he is the L&D head of Wipro. Go over to you, Surya.
Pratima, thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. I promise I will not stand between the great speakers and rest of us. We are all looking forward to this powerful session. Just a few words about L&D Global, as Pratima requested me to talk about. So when she put up the picture on the screen, I could recall one thing. If a community is a beautiful garden, the people that you saw in the picture are the gardeners. If a community has beautiful plants and flowers, if the garden has a beautiful set of trees and plants and flowers, we need gardeners who make it possible. So this small bunch of people, I can definitely say that I am the odd man out, not a very competent gardener, but somehow pulling along in the midst of a few very, very competent gardeners who are working day in and day out to make this community look beautiful, meaningful, and strong. And all that goes behind the scenes to make these meetings possible once a month is humongous. Right from identifying a theme, a focus area, narrowing down on the speakers, then the logistics, promoting the event, getting people excited about the event. It's a lot of effort to make it happen. And this core team, all the names that you saw, Pratima, Namita, Navnita, Ankita, Smita, Divya, Rangraj, the names that you saw are really making it possible for all of us. L&D Global is a community. We are a community. We are neither an organization nor a society. We are a community of L&D professionals and individuals who believe in learning and development. We started a few years ago. I believe like any other living entity, a community also is full of life, full of energy. And like an individual goes through its ups and downs in his or her life, a community also goes through that. A community also goes through different stages of its lifespan. So we probably have gone through our infancy, and there we are slowly trying to step into our childhood, and then probably will move into the adolescence thereafter. We need all of you to make this community stronger, and we need more gardeners to make this garden look more beautiful. So that's our philosophy. Our philosophy is collaboration, co-creation, and contribution. We believe in bringing people together, get them to collaborate. They collaborate to co-create something, to co-create new body of knowledge, new solutions, new ideas, new artifacts. And collaboration and co-creation is meaningless if it doesn't contribute and if it doesn't make a difference to the world, to the community at large, to the industry. So that's how the last C in our vision is contribution. We have a great panel today, and then we bring up great speakers in every meetup. And this is what happens across all our chapters. And because of the pandemic in the virtual world today, we have been able to bring our community leaders from across India in this platform every month. As you see here, Pranavesh, you can see Mayank from Pune, you can see Keshav, you can see various other Madhusudhan from Kolkata. You see various leaders from different parts of the country who have joined. We'll continue to do that. While the negative side of the pandemic is that we are not able to meet in person, face to face, but the positive side is we have been able to bring people from across the country and globe together. We have three great panelists today, and I have listened to them in different forums. I really admire them for the perspectives they bring in, but more than that, I admire them for their commitment to the cause they stand for. And each one of them are doing a lot of work in this area, in the area of diversity and inclusion. And I really appreciate the work that they're doing. And I would hope that today's session is not just another dialogue, but it's a meaningful dialogue which gives us actionables that we can take back and see how we can implement in our families to start with, in our neighborhood, in our organizations. But I think the beginning is in the families. When we're talking about the gender log, when we talk about diversity, our families are great examples of diversity. And unless we practice it there, I don't think we can practice anywhere. Unless we ingrain these values in our children about diversity and inclusion, I don't think any amount of work that we do in organizations will become effective. So with that note, I would like to thank the core team for stitching together a beautiful program, and all the members of L&D Global, all the participants today. Thank you very much, and wish you all a great session. Thank you.
Thank you, Surya, for the wonderful, for taking us through the values of L&D Global. I think time to time, when we get reminded, it always helps us to keep in line with the values. Thank you. Moving on, our next. Okay. So we have an important announcement. I'll hand it over to Smita. Smita is a L&D Global L&D consultant and founder of Fluency Learning. Over to you, Smita.
Thanks a lot, Pratima. Surya, you spoke about gardeners, etc., but you set up the very garden. Nothing would have happened if you had not set up the garden and cleared the path for all of us to do all these things. And you're there with us every day and every moment of it. Thank you so much for the awesome start as always, Surya. So I'm sure all of you are really waiting to get started with this bunch of elite speakers that we have, the panel that we have, and I don't want to be a party pooper. So very quickly, I will make this announcement that we've been wanting to do. So I'm making this announcement today on behalf of L&D Global. We've all really been enjoying the sessions, networking, learning through our monthly meets so far. And then during our discussions, we thought, why not make it better? So we decided to come up with a membership model. This membership model is something through which we intend to take up things forward in the spirit of L&D Global, as Surya just mentioned, collaborate, co-create, and contribute. What we intend to do is bring in many other avenues other than our monthly meets for learning and networking and showcasing our skills. It could be through blogs that we create, to papers that we publish, many other things that we bring in together. We have a website where we can showcase any skills of anybody who becomes a part of our membership. Even there would be some sessions which would probably be free of cost for the people who join in as members. And the whole idea is to increase the learning, networking, and giving us an opportunity or a platform where we can showcase our skills as individuals, as organizations, etc. So this is not the only thing. We also are very much open to collaborative sessions with whoever wants to get together with us and have a session where both of us are partnering to bring forward many different things. It could be something like a certification or some kind of event. We are perfectly fine opening to collaborative learning sessions, as that itself is the spirit of L&D Global. We are soon going to launch this membership, and we're really looking forward to hear from you all. You all know who the core members are by now very clearly, and you can reach out to any one of us. We're all there in the group, and most of you know us. And we're there. You can reach out to us, and we will give you more information. But we're soon going to launch the membership model. And the main thing here is it's not just us, the core team. We're only just enabling these sessions and this thing. What we would really love is to hear from you all. what are your views? What is that you would like to bring on into this membership model? That is what we really are keen on hearing, and we're really looking forward to hearing from you all. Please reach out to us on our personal windows. You can call us, you can message us. We are open to discussions with you before we actually launch it. We're soon going to launch it in the month of April, and before that, look forward to all your views and ideas on this. Thank you all so much for that. So I will not take more time than this. I'm sure we can connect on personal window, and we will share information on the meetup and the Telegram group as well about this. So we have our LinkedIn and Facebook groups as well. I'm sure many of you are a part of this. Those who are not, please tell us, and we will add you onto those groups as well. Okay, and I would now like to hand the stage over to Ranga. So I would like to introduce Rangraj Bhattacharya, our technology partner today. And he's the co-founder and CEO of VMove Solutions. And he's also the moderator of the session today. Okay, so we're looking forward to the session and handing over to you, Ranga. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Smita. So, hey everyone, good morning. So, a little bit before we start, just a little bit about our company, We Move Solutions. So, we are a theater-based learning company. Started off in 2015. The whole idea why I started We Move Solutions was to redefine learning using techniques like theater and storytelling. So, it's a fun team that we have with people who have quit the IT world, come in and trying to change the way learning happens. So far we have worked with about 17 cities in India, and uh, because of COVID, the boundaries got even more shorter, and we started working across with our clients in the different parts of the world as well. One of the things that we are really proud about is we were identified as one of the best startups, even the most innovative startups in 2017 by CII. So far, we have worked with more than about 150,000 people across 50 companies. So that's a very brief about us. And thank you for that. Now let's get started with the session. Now, before I actually introduce our wonderful speakers, whom you all are eagerly waiting to meet, there's a real short story that I want to share from my personal experience. So, back then, I think this was in about say 2011, 2012, when I was about to get married. Met my wife, and it was an arranged marriage. You know, whole process that goes our Indian community, right? The way we go about with the arranged marriage. So I met my wife. We both liked each other. Then we started kind of dating, with obviously our parents' permission. And we had about 8 months of dating time before we actually got married. There was something very important. Apparently, me and my family had left out and had not asked my wife, which she told me after a week after we got married. She said, "How come so far neither you or your family have ever asked me if I know cooking or any of the household chores?" I was like, surprised. Why? Then I said, "It doesn't matter. If you know cooking, great. If you don't know, I know it anyway." And after that, for the next 5 years, she actually did not learn cooking, or she didn't have the need to do that. She works in a bank, so I was there to help her out. I was running my startup by then. I'm always there to help her out with the cooking and everything. Now, though she's learned cooking after close to over 8 years of our marriage, she still steps into the kitchen only when it's absolutely necessary. The reason I'm sharing this story was because we talk of creating gender balanced workplace. We talk of breaking stereotypes and everything. The whole point is it should start at home. So now, with that thought in mind, all men who don't know cooking, please do learn. It's a fantastic thing. It's a very good chance also for you to, make sure that you start creating a gender balanced workplace at your homes. Let's actually welcome our speakers. We've got three wonderful speakers lined up: Neeraja Ganesh, Nirmala Menon, and Augustus Azaria. Neeraja, the leadership consultant and coach, she's got more than 25 years of experience in the corporate world. She quit her corporate job and started heading the jobs for her foundation to reduce the gender gap. Today, she's working with organizations leading initiatives on diversity and inclusion. Had the pleasure to read about what she writes on LinkedIn. Oh, this is the first time I'm actually going to listen to her. And I must say, it's truly, truly wonderful and inspiring, not just for women, but for all of us. Nirja, welcome into the session. It's a pleasure to be talking to you.
Thank you so much. My privilege, I must say, to be on this panel. Thank you.
Second speaker is Nirmala Menon. She's the founder and CEO of Interweave Consulting. She is one of the top 50 diversity professionals, and she comes with an experience of more than 30 years in the corporate world. She's an expert in building D&I solutions for the organizations and has been helping companies to not only understand the importance of D&I, also make sure that catch hold of the right stakeholders to implement D&I solutions effectively. Nirmala, welcome into the session.
Thank you, Rangaraj.
And our third speaker is Augustus Azaria. He is the HR leader at IBM, a keynote speaker, author, coach, and mentor. He's got more than 25 years of experience in HR. His vision is to prepare the employees to embrace change and seamlessly transition into a workplace for the future where they are healthier and happier. In his profile, he says, the future of work is my interest and this will revolutionize the way we work and how business operates. He's been a great catalyst ensuring that the future is sustainable and a happy place. I've had the opportunity to hear him. He's a wonderful speaker and brings in a fantastic perspective into the discussion. Augustus, welcome into the session.
Thank you so much, Ranga, and truly delighted to be here this morning. And among such familiar faces, the HR fraternity, and I'm very excited to share my thoughts this morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So now, let's actually start off with a very, very simple question, which I want to ask all of you. Okay. Now, when we talk about gender diversity, when we talk of creating a gender balanced workplace, the basic question is, why is it needed? Why should we not go ahead with the current culture where most places managers prefer resources who actually work long and hard? And obviously in their defense, they are actually looking at ensuring that the work happens and the company actually gets a lot of profit from it and works well. Why is this whole talk about gender balance, or what we talk of bringing in a gender diversity or an inclusive workplace, why is it needed? I would love to hear your thoughts on it before we get started, where we have a few questions lined up for you, and I would be asking specifically for you on this. It's open to all three of you. You would love to hear all three of your perspectives on this. Guess why don't we start with you?
Sure, thank you, Ranga. A gender balanced workforce, it's not a nice to have. It's not something cosmetic. Makes business sense. Why does it make business sense? Look at organizations, take for example, listed on NASDAQ. And you will see that when women are on the boards of these organizations that are listed, their stock price appreciates. Their market value appreciates. They gain more share in the market. There's a greater acceptance for the products that they develop and sell. So it is about business value. It makes dollar sense. It meets your bottom line. So don't ever think that women in the workforce or gender diversity, so to say, is a nice to have. It is not. It is a business imperative. It makes sense. It adds to your bottom line. Thank you.
I would like to respond to this by, narrating a story from my own life. So you might assume that, okay, being a woman, you kind of, understand everything about a woman, and hence what she needs and what organizations need to do for a woman. So when I was at Capgemini, I was asked to put out a recommendation to hire women on a career break. And I thought, what's the big deal about it? Just like you hire a man, you hire a woman on a career break. And this stemmed from the fact that I have worked nonstop 25 years in the corporate world. I have never taken a break. So really didn't didn't see the difference in the way you hire a woman on a career break. Anyways, the organization asked me to put out a recommendation, so I couldn't give this as a one-liner, right? So I actually did some research and spoke to some of my friends who had taken a career break and realized that there are some portals that exist specifically for these women on a career break. So then my recommendation was, let's go look at here, you get the database from there and we'll do an event, hire them. Simplistic solution. And then because I was, because of the research, I was actually registered on some of these portals. I got invited to a conference for these women. I was not on a break, was not contemplating a break. It was a Saturday morning, pre-COVID in the Taj, I think, a full day event. I still went, despite the fact that, my husband was saying, why a Saturday on this topic, which I don't think is, of any use to you or relevance to you. I said, let me go, and I went. And that is where I heard these women in terms of their struggle to even get to an interview for get a job. And the empathy towards the woman, despite me being a woman, actually came from there. And then, of course, that's the start of my journey. Of course, I was doing a lot in the D&I space, but the start of a journey to say, how can I create an impact, even to one woman if I can? And today I know, the number of women that I've created the impact. So what I'm trying to say is that all of us have biases. It is all, doesn't matter man, woman, what gender or what culture, what age. It is because of the conditioning that we have, the social conditioning, the way we are brought up, the ecosystem that we live in. And we will be blind to so many aspects that could make a better workplace, that could bring about a better culture, eventually, as Augie said, drive better business outcomes. How you as one person will not know what the customer needs. You need a diverse, workplace. Gender is one of those diverse, diversity aspects that we look at. And hence, I believe it is an imperative, no matter what.
Thank you, Nirja. Nirmala, I would love to hear your perspective.
Okay, thank you, Rangraj. I know the business case Augie spoke about, just spoke about the fact that there are women out there who need to bring in, and we lose by not having them in the workforce. I want to take a slightly different view here and say that, it's not as much about gender as it is about the attributes the two genders seem to bring in, the masculinity and the femininity. And I think that's just the natural order of life. For anything to be balanced in nature, the yin and yang, the Ardhanarishwari concept, go anywhere, we are talking about a balance between the two. Anytime there is an imbalance, we are asking for trouble. And if we have unconsciously let something happen over a period of time, it's time to intentionally bring that balance. And I think that's what we are trying to do. Because the whole concept of the male leader, leadership being developed or imagined as masculine traits, I think is passé now. In a sense, we are talking about more feminine attributes being relevant for the 21st century, which then means either we make our men more feminine or we get more women into the workplace. You get what I'm trying to say? I'm just saying that the balance becomes important. So gender balance is not necessarily in terms of 50% men and 50% women, because that's the easiest way to do it, obviously. But when we get to a point where society allows men and women to be who they really want to be, the gender diversity will happen on its own, or the merits of what we are looking for will happen on its own. So at this point, we are looking specifically at bringing more women in simply because it's been a more masculine, legacy that we've been handed down, and we need to change that. So, just kind of putting that thought out there.
It's actually wonderful because I actually was doing a lot of reading in terms of the concepts of the masculinity and femininity that we speak of, the Ardhanarishwara concept, and a lot of cultures embrace this. It's not just the gender in terms of the appearance, but it's the features in terms of our internal skill and the way we speak, the way we think, and how our emotions are connected. And that actually brings in different perspectives on things, and it actually looks at different things. Like, say, someone masculine might not necessarily be a man. It could be a woman who's more masculine than men. It's just in the thought, and it's just in the perspective that we put across, right? It's wonderful. Thank to all three of you for bringing in your different perspectives on the first basic question. Nirja, the question to you. is gender inequality simply not a recognized issue at all?
Okay, I'm unmuted. Sorry, I was just looking whether I'm on mute or not. Gender inequality not recognized as an issue. See, we've heard this enough. Okay. At least when I was growing up, we probably did not hear about this. When I was growing up in the organizations, I was not hearing about this. But over a period of time, we've heard this enough. So whether you like it or not, it's there in the heads of a lot of people, right? I've come to a stage that when I do walk into a room, of course, today in the virtual room, I do look around to see how many men and women, regardless of the topic, regardless of, the agenda that we are there to meet. So it is there in the heads of everyone. But I would like to talk about equity more than equality, because I think it is much easier to reach equal status by just having numbers out there. But what after that? It may be easier to hire equal numbers, but what after that? Because those equal numbers have to then deliver on the business outcomes. So what are you doing to enable that? And hence, I think the equity aspect is more important than equality for me. And I will quickly narrate another story from my life. So when I started off, I started off at Sonata as a contract programmer for 3 months. I was still studying at NIIT. And NIIT, of course, I used to have only 2 hours a day, 3 days a week kind of classes. And it was probably easy for me to even, take on a job, an 8-hour job at Sonata. But the hassle was that we had to work in shifts, talking of 1992. So we didn't have as many computers that organizations could offer to all the staff. So we worked in shifts. So morning shift, 7 to 3. And I being a girl, and my classes used to be from 3 to 5, I was put in the morning shift, which would still work out well, I guess. But the other hassle was that we didn't have computers at home. So we used to hang around at NIIT to practice beyond our classes. And we would look around for spare PCs, maybe somebody's absent, a faculty member has not come, or there's a break or something. So we used to hang around the whole day at NIIT to get that spare PC to practice. Now that is not predictable. So if you're in a morning shift, then mornings you don't get that NIIT, free PC, and then 3 to 5 is the class. Then you don't know after 5 whether you can or not. So I went back. So there are only 2 options, right? Either I quit the job and do my NIIT, finish my entire 4th semester is remaining another 6 months, or I take a break from NIIT and focus on this, because the first job, a contract job, it could become a permanent job for me. But I chose to come and ask my manager, tell her that this is this predicament. I don't know what to do. She said, I'll make an exception for you. I will give you a dedicated PC. I'm not going to do that for anybody else. Everyone will work in shifts. I give you a dedicated PC, so you can come in at any time and go anytime, as long as you finish the work that you're supposed to do, in the week. No exceptions there. Same number of, programs, same quality outcomes as the rest of the team. We were 14 of us, who were hired from NIIT. But I will give you a dedicated PC. And that, enabled me to finish my studies, also finish my contract assignment at Sonata, and become a permanent employee like everybody else. And then, my, long journey, the 25 years. If that exception was not made to me, which is what I believe is equity, right? Whenever you talk about equality and equity, there's a slide that comes, I'm sure people have seen that, about these 3 kids wanting to watch the match, beyond that fence. It's a kind of a wooden fence.
Right.
And you have the tall kid able to see, the middle height given 1 stool, and the shortest one given 2 stools, right? So that's the equity piece that you're doing. You're not making any favors. I was not given a favor to say lesser number of programs, more defects. But to me, I think more than the gender equality or gender inequality, because that is an easier thing. Equality, I'll get people, and then you go ahead and you prove to us. I think the equity is more important. Can we assess that? And can we enable that? Can we make it a more inclusive workplace is what I would like to say to this.
Thank you. Actually, that answer took me back to 2 things. One is when you said equity, I remember seeing a meme where someone had posted, it's not equity or equality, it's a felony because they're watching a match without buying the tickets. Just smiling about it. But I get your whole, right? I get your whole point. So the whole thing is, when I also worked in the IT, we had people from the genders being part of my team. and like there was no exception. If there was work, you work. Maybe we ensure only thing we ensured is you are safe while you are in the workplace and you get home safe so that your family is not worried about you. But the exceptions were not made and the promotions were not given, or discussions was never about, okay, which gender this person is, and what is he or she bringing onto the table. Do I look at saying 6 months down the line what happens, or 3 months down the line what happens, or years down the line what happens? But now, being on the other side, being outside the corporate world and trying to work with organizations, I actually hear a lot of these discussions and questions and concerns raised by people on managers who understand diversity and inclusion, who understand about everything the HRs are trying to bring in diversity hiring, but it's truly not getting implemented. So I'm going to put this a question across to Augie. I guess this what can organizations do to create an environment that promotes a balanced workplace? It's not about diversity hiring initiatives, but ensuring that there is a balanced workplace. Please, we would love to listen to you.
Thank you, Ranga. First of all, taking a point from what you said, what is HR doing here? First of all, gender diversity is not a HR role. In that sense, HR doesn't own it. I think the business, the organization owns it. It's right up there in terms of your business strategy. It's right up there as a policy, and it is sponsored or held by the business. And both Nimi and Neeraja knows how we have traversed that in the organization. And at least in the company that I come from, much before the equal opportunity laws were passed in the 1940s in the US, when there was racial segregation, IBM came up with a policy, that says that we are for a equal opportunity workforce, and then went on to champion women in various technology roles. All right. So it comes from the top typically, and they hold it target, for diversity hiring. And then a higher incentive, for the stakeholders, if employees referred more women, or the agencies referred more women, we give them higher amounts of money in their hands. I think that was good at that point in time. All right. Affirmative action, until you bring it up to a point, a level, is okay, but it cannot continue. All right. Because at some point, meritocracy is going to take a hit. So while meritocracy is there, you now have to move away from that target driven approach to a culture.
Wonderful.
Culture from hiring managers. Now, hiring managers or the frontline needs to have that drilled into them as to why you need to have that gender equity. All right. And I was in another meeting forum yesterday at CII, and very clearly one of the leaders out there said, it is not about lowering the bar, it's about widening the gates. And when you widen the gates, you've got to have enablers, whether it is a creche for the women or whether it is anything else. And somebody also said, in terms of travel, how many restrooms are there when women have to travel from one city to another on road, and therefore that's an enabler, infrastructure. So both from the corporate as well as from the government perspective, that needs to happen. And last but not least is unconscious bias. A lot of us felt it starts from the home, and I know it does. And believe me, somewhere I thought that, hey, this is part of the DNA because of something my little son told me a few years ago. For those of you who know that I have a pony, all right? And my little son, I think he was in about grade 3 or 4 at that time. He said, Dada, why are you growing long hair like a girl? Why don't you cut it? It was shocking to me that my son could have that unconscious bias when in the home, we don't have anything like that. Then I realized what conditions his mind is what he sees. He sees the women in the family having long hair and the men having shorter hair. So now he gets that unconscious bias. Similarly, I think in the workplace, we have a lot of these unconscious biases, and it is about challenging that bias. For example, I go to a restaurant and with the family, let's say, and I get served first. And then I say, no, 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 hang on, serve from that side. Now, in the mind of this employee or the server in the hotel, he is culturally conditioned to come and serve the gentleman first. Whereas I think we have to go and change that and reset it and say, hey, serve the lady first. Not that, we are being, what I would say, I'm not getting the word. Anyway, so the thing here is everywhere I go, I see that unconscious bias creeping in. Sometimes it happens to us too, very clearly. Every day it happens. But I think it is about taking the pause, think, and then say, hey, let's make that change. Or somebody says the driver is come, and usually you refer to the driver as a he. I don't know, why not? There are so many women drivers who are there. So sometimes the Uber or the Ola app that you might have may not even say that. Okay, and we tend to presume these things. So to me, it is about infrastructure, it's about unconscious bias, it's about the enablers, it's not about lowering the bar, it's about widening the gates, and last but not least, it's about culture and not quota. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Augie.
When Augie was narrating about the story at home with his kid, I remembered the story at home with my kid. I have a daughter who now is 19, but I remember when she was 3 or lesser than that, she made a statement that, women have to cook in the kitchen. I mean, Rangraj, to your point as he started. And this despite the fact that I don't cook. So your wife cooks when needed. I think I don't cook when needed also. I mean,
the thing in my family now has become my son has never seen my wife cook. So despite even if she gets into the point of cutting the vegetables or trying to enter the kitchen, it becomes a big fuss. So my son is 4. So for him, his mom never cooks. Cooking is done only by dad.
Yeah, but here, I think what I observed was, though she has seen her mother, of course, going to work ever since she was born, right? I've been working. I think she saw her grandmothers. So I live in a joint family. So she saw, my mother-in-law. And then, of course, my mother used to live in the same city. So every week we would be kind of shuttling. She's seen the grandmothers who probably brought her up more than I did. And she had this, in her head that women work and in the kitchen, right? Despite the fact that she had a working mother. So these things kind of get into the heads from the family. I definitely agree. And hence, we cannot ignore it. I think we have to very intentionally, see what is the language we use. But beyond that, what is it that the children around us and everyone else around us is observing? And then it comes to the workplace.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nirja. So, Nirmala, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. So before I let you talk, there's one small thing I want to share. So when I used to work in the IT, so I've normally believed this, that women are better leaders than men, and only women can have the influence to shape up a culture, either of a company or a family or even a country for that matter. So the more powerful the women are, it works. And in India, we have always had that belief, right, where women are worshipped, gods actually are there and happiness prevails. But when I actually said this to a bunch of leaders during one of my sessions, the response I got was men just smiled. Women didn't know how to acknowledge it. And some of them thought I was just telling this to, score some brownie points with the business head who was a lady. Enough. The question to you is, you have worked with organizations, you have worked building people, helping people in terms of building diversity and inclusion programs. Now, what can be, the organizations, and in terms of the HR, which is the heart of the organization, what can they do to identify the right stakeholders there? And how do they make sure that, as Augie was talking about, it's about, not lowering the bar, it's about widening the gates, or like you guys mentioned, that it's not about equality, it's about equity and bringing in that cultural change. And who would be the right people to do that?
Yeah, the short answer is all of us, right? But to kind of just put this in context, I mean, everything that has been said this morning is so relevant, because this is not a simple issue to sort, right? your earlier question, do people even recognize there is a problem? Obviously not. Otherwise, we would have sorted this out earlier, right? We have to let people know, because it's not a short-term thing. I can go through my life without talking about diversity and inclusion. But my daughter and her child will have a problem that they will have to deal with. And therefore, this is something that we are solving for the future, which I may not need to deal with. And this is a big problem in organizations, because leaders are there for a certain period of time and then they move on to their next job. So they need to do what is visible. So I will put a diversity program in place. I will run 2-3 initiatives and then, put that down and say, I've done these things in my time. And then they move on to the next role and that whole thing collapses and the next set of initiatives begin, right? So we are not really building an institutional, systemic infra for it to succeed. And it's obviously not a small thing to do, right? At one level, if you look at it, it is a very complex space. It's historically, culturally, psychologically, managerially a challenging space to navigate, right? There are multiple levers that are working on this, and it's not going to be sorted in one generation or two. We are going to have to work with this on an ongoing basis. So it really is about helping people to see that it matters to them, even if it's not a very direct, impact. It is going to impact their children, and which is where the emotional aspect comes in, because we all buy things rationally. I can say, 50% women, therefore they should be in the workplace, or women buy our consumer products, so therefore we should have their ideas on how we should build a product. Yes, all that is great. But you actually practice this is where the problem is, right? Practicing it and making it happen, because at some level, if I am doing something that was meant to be done by somebody else, or so, historically it has been, that person is going to fight it. Right? Why would they want to do this? And you take an average manager in an organization, they are wondering, what's wrong with my organization? Why do I need to hire a woman if there are enough men to do the job? They are not going to come up and say, I'm getting married, I'm going away, I'm going to have a child, I have caring responsibilities. Men and women ask these questions. So you need to give them a really cool answer as to why they need to do this, despite the inconvenience in quotes of women going off on maternity leave and carrying responsibility. They need to see why that is important, because there is an inconvenience to the system when you are bringing in diversity of any kind. We are talking women right now, so I'm just saying that, but any kind of diversity, there is going to be an inconvenience in the system. Are we gearing ourselves up? And to gear ourselves up, it's not just about policies and programs, it's about helping people to see why they need to contribute. So to me, the biggest challenge is really around that. Because in some ways, we've sorted out what needs to be done. We all know the solutions. It's can we roll up our sleeves and get to work?
Right. So, I completely agree with you on that, because I remember this when I was in IT. I had a team lead. So you're fresh into the IT world. You're trying to explore different things. So it so happened that I think it was about 6-7 months into the company was trying to celebrate its 10th anniversary or so. So as a group, we all got together, and there was one guy who was a salsa expert. So he said, let's put up a performance on salsa. Great. So we all thought, great, we'll meet at around 6:30, we'll get started. So every day I used to go there at 6:30 and we used to all do all of this. And one day, one of my team lead comes up and says, "Yeah, Ranga, tu aajkal dikh nahi raha. Where are you?" I said, "Boss, I come in at 9 o'clock in the morning, work until 6:30. After 6:30, I'm going. What's your problem?" He says, "No, we have a client call at 8 o'clock on Thursdays." I said, "So Thursdays, I'm here for the call, right? So why do you expect me to stay here?" And it so turned out that I did not actually get my hike the right way after 6 months. So my confirmation that had to be done for 6 months, even though I was one of the best guys that in the team, it took 9 months because he did not like my answer of so. And women actually have to go through a lot of such things, right? There are such stereotypes that exist saying that, okay, they might have to take care of the family, they go home early and all of it. And these gender stereotypes are pretty common, irrespective. So each gender has their own weight to carry. So Neerja, the question now for you from Nirmala, I'll come to you, saying that to avoid these gender stereotypes from impacting the work and people actually taking everything right in the right way and working along with what exists around us rather than trying to force things with our own perspectives, who should organizations hold responsible for it? I'll not use the word stakeholders. I'll use, okay, how do we get people put on the front of the gun and say, let's get this achieved in terms of a culture change? So who should organizations put on the gun?
I think, if we talk about stereotypes and if we talk about organizations and who do they target to kind of get this corrected, Nirmala actually said that it kind of is all. Right? Everyone needs to contribute to it. It cannot be, one person. So the first part of my answer would be that it is across. You can't just say, okay, the leaders, you have, you put a KRA, you have some, data to show, and you kind of, are a happy bunch. And I go back to the discussion that we earlier had when I was moderating the discussion at BCIC, where we actually spoke and understood it is not about just the numbers. It is about what are those roles that women are in. Because again, numbers is easy to achieve. You can bring in fresh grads, maybe 80-20, women, and you have a great, metric to tick off. But are you putting these women and enabling them to go into those roles and in the hierarchy, which actually brings the value add and hence the business outcomes, right? So the leaders have that as their responsibility to ensure that, it's kind of across. The recruiters and the hiring managers have their responsibilities to ensure that they bring in that many number of CVs. If you don't even have an equal number of CVs to interview, then you, of course, after that, everything is, meritocracy. I'm not denying it. But at least get the number of CVs first. You're getting 20 women and 80 men CVs to hire for 2 positions. Obviously, the probability theory will tell you where it is going to tip. So will you put in the efforts to bring 50-50? And if you're not able to get those 50, you may have 1 week, 10 days to churn out the CVs. And if you're not getting 50-50, then make the 10 days, 20 days or whatever. So you need to have an engine that works towards this. And despite that, I have heard that there are certain, roles and so, like, for example, aeronautical engineering. You don't have too many girls taking up that as, a subject. And hence the organizations that do wish to bring in women, they don't have, that kind of a pipeline. So what are you doing to bring that pipeline? So you have to then probably use your marketing and your CSR and your D&I to go to these colleges to tell the girls that it is important and it's a great job and, develop those role models. The third, of course, is all your peers, all the team members to ensure that you enable and an environment where the women and whichever diversity aspect we're talking about can thrive and perform. But finally, I will also say that it is also for the women. And I will say that very harshly, that you also have to perform at the end of the day. If you want that job, you have to be equally competitive as the man and the other women, and please go all out there to perform. Once you've proven your mettle, and then if you need some, flexibility as an example, I don't think you will need to ask. The organization, will give that to you. But somewhere the going in position that I'm a woman, hence do this for me is something that I never buy into. While the organizations have to enable that and they will do it and they are doing it, I think, it is a responsibility of everyone to kind of, do this. So quick example that I can give is when I went on to head the Jobs for Her Foundation, I had a situation at home where my mother-in-law needed care. And I was also building a new house at that point in time. And of course, I had no clue of how to run an NGO, 25 years of IT corporate experience. And then my husband said, do you really want to take on this role now, given that you need to care for your mother-in-law at home? Of course, my husband works from home, so I have a huge support system. But despite that, there might be some time when I had to be at home. And this NGO, so new learning for you, and this house that we have to look at. And you are the one who's going to, want to have the house in a particular manner when it is getting constructed. And I went and had the conversation with Neha Bagaria upfront to say that, I will need some flexibility at some point in time. I will let you know when that is. But right now I'm good. So you letting the managers know upfront is also a good option. And the managers kind of have evaluated you through that period that, yes, you deliver on what you want to, and hence you will get that flexibility when required. So long answer, but the point is that everyone in the organization, everyone in the ecosystem has to, kind of.
Thank you, Neerja and Nimi, for that. So I'll take a short pause from the questions because Navnita has got a question for all of you. Navnita, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ranga. So my question was to add on to what Nirmala was saying, and this is something that happened many years back when I was in a startup firm, an IT startup firm, Nirmala, and I was a manager HR. And during these weekly reviews, when I reviewed the recruitment team, there was always this one position which was in the red, that was not getting closed. So I asked this recruitment lady as to, hey, Hema, why isn't this getting closed? What's the problem? So the funny thing was that role was of a call coordinator. So it's a junior role, but a very important role for the technical support team. Now, what was happening is she told me that whoever was the technical support head was not selecting anybody. Madam, what do I do? Whoever I bring, he's rejected. So I wanted to deep dive, and I said, what's the scene? So she said, he is very clear that he wants women because men don't sound sweet, apparently. If people call and they need a woman to, so I said, okay, what next? So she said, I got a very, very smart fresher. He rejected her, saying that, Are, she will get married in the next 1 or 2 years and go off. So I said, okay. So she said, ma'am, then I brought a married lady. And he said that, no, now she'll go off on a maternity leave. And then he didn't give her the offer. Then she brought a married lady with a child. He said, no, this is going to be a disaster because she will keep taking leaves whenever the kid falls sick, PTND, sports day, this and that. And then she said, I brought a married lady who was single. That also he did not accept because whatever it is, she's the only person who will have to run around. So he said, what do I do? And I don't know, that was a jinxed thing. I just could not convince this head of support. And back then I was maybe much more younger and dumber, and I did not know what to tell him. But that always lingered in my mind. What is your advice to, in such a situation, how do we talk to this business leader and, make him feel that this, I know, as you said, the inconvenience is there. And I'm sure from his angle, it is a genuine inconvenience that he's talking about. I'm not denying it, but what do they do in such a, how do we deal with such a business leader?
Yeah. One is, like he said, put a gun to their head and say, hire, because many times you don't know the value till you actually try. I mean, take the pandemic, for example. That's my favorite example. As of March last year, February, March, we were talking to companies. We work in this space of helping organizations become more inclusive, and flexibility is such a valued requirement. And we were telling organizations, you should try this. And almost everybody, a lot of organizations, except for the IT space, many of them said, oh, that's 5 to 10 years later. It's not going to happen now. Okay. And guess what? March came, and overnight, without any planning, without any budgets, without any major strategy around it, we all went, virtual, and it all worked. So sometimes you have to be pushed to the corner to understand that it can work. So which is why, to your earlier question, Rangaraj, that you were asking, who should be held to the gun? I think leaders must be. Leaders are very capable of making results happen. And that is why organizations run, right? You give something, they run far more efficiently than governments and any other setup. Corporates are meant to make things happen. So if it is not happening in the corporate world, it's simply because leaders have not taken the responsibility. So I would put this responsibility and accountability squarely on them, because if they say this is important and walk the talk, which is why they need to be first convinced about it, because, and I'm being very, very candid because you're all, in the learning space, and we need to know what the real problems are. I've been in this space for the last 13, 14 years. And I can tell you, I did not have the years of CEOs until about 18, 20 months ago. Mm-hmm. Okay. They would say, oh, yes, this is all the right thing from the, podiums, everything, all the right things are said, but they would not come into a workshop and spend half a day because they knew everything about it. They will send their learning head, their HR head, their next in line can go, but I don't need to go, right? And when did I see that changing? About 2 years ago, slowly, because now it is sitting on the agendas of senior leaders. Right. So now they are trying to understand what it is that I really need to do. What do I need to be able to do to make results happen? And I think more and more organizations need to do that, link it to people's performance, senior leaders' performance. They should be held accountable. Then we will start to see results, because corporates are very capable of making results happen. You give them a target, that's what they're good at. Yeah, give them a goal, meet it, they will find ways to do it.
Right. Thanks, Nirola. So what you're saying is, if we have to truly achieve diversity, then just don't mention it as a KRA point for someone at the mid-manager level or at an executive, but put it on to the leader and tell him these are the numbers in terms of equity and culture index I want to achieve, and it will definitely happen for sure.
Yeah, and one more thing, if I may add, again, going back to the stereotypes, right? I go back to saying that I would not have done this 10 years ago, but off late, because everywhere we hear about the D&I aspect. So when I was at this organization, I was called to attend an offsite, a strategy offsite. So it was the business unit head, his next level and the next level. So I was at the third level, right? So we were about 25 senior leaders who had to go away to this offsite 2 days in Pune. As I walked in, I looked around to see, and I was new into that particular business unit. I walked in and I looked around to see any other woman. I was the only woman among the 25. And they told me this particular client, this account was servicing a client, has been in existence for 15 years. So in 15 years, I was the first woman to have been brought in. So, all the more pressure on me. I put it on myself that, okay, I have to make this work. And I had frequent travels to do to Pune, and this is all pre-2020. So without a travel to Pune, work wouldn't happen. So I was doing that so very often. And over a period of 6 months, there were situations at home which needed more of my attention, and I couldn't do the travel. So I actually came out of that account. Felt extremely guilty, because then people will again say, oh, see, a woman was not able to do it, right? And so I felt guilty about the fact that maybe this account will not bring in another woman for the next 15 years, because they tried it once and it didn't work. Anyways, I lived with that guilt. And then after a few months, I quit that organization. And a few months later, a friend of mine, a peer of mine, who was also in a similar role and used to do this travel up and down, he called me to say he's quitting from the organization. So I said, oh, where are you joining? And he said, I haven't yet decided, but I know a few things for sure. I'm not going to take on a role which has this kind of crazy travel. I'm not going to take on a role which has a US client, because I don't want to do those US hours. Mostly, I want to give time to my young child. So I felt that guilt, coming down, because it was not only a woman, right? Even a man needs all of that. So I think, to your question, how does this change come by, is when I think the organizations understand that it is a need for everyone. Traditionally, the men have not probably spoken up to say that, I want to take a sabbatical, or I have to care for someone and things like that. And hence it is on the woman, and hence the woman goes through all of that. So the minute you make it as an open policy, you make gender neutral policies, why maternity? Let's do a parental leave policy or anything else towards that. It enables in two ways. One, the men in the organization also can avail of that. So then the hiring manager doesn't think, oh, will the woman take it or the man? Anyone can take it. Secondly, an organization which has, say, a paternity leave, the man will take, and hence his wife can probably go back to her work and, be there in the workforce. So I think it's kind of also a need to make all our policies very gender neutral as much as possible.
Thank you for that. So when you said, talking about in terms of the leaves that you took and the break and all of it, and also there's a lot of discussion around the maternity leave. Like, say, I think a couple of years back or last year, the government brought in a rule that to extend the maternity leave for 6 months instead of 3 months, right? I actually heard stories of people managers not willing to hire women who were married, or because for them it was like, okay, if she's married now recently or a year or two back, maybe she'll have a child, she'll not be available for me for the next 6 months. But the same thing when I was in IT, I think this was especially with so I was with IBM, and one of the managers there, my cousin was working as a contractor with one of the projects, and she was expecting, so she went on a maternity leave, and back then it was 3 months. I'm talking of this is around somewhere between 2008 to 2012. So she went on a maternity leave for 3 months. Now, after 3 months, she couldn't come back to the job. She called up this manager and said, hey, I might need it for another, I might need to extend my break for another 3 months. So will I still have my contract when I come back? So the manager simply said, you want to take a break? Take a break for a year. It's okay. Come back, you will still have your contract job. Now, this flexibility, I have seen it in IBM, but I've not seen it in many other corporates. And sorry to other people who are working in other companies, I'm able to give the example of IBM because I was part of the company, and no disrespect to the other companies. But the question actually I want to ask is this: now, my wife works for a public sector bank. When our son was born, she could easily take a sabbatical for a year and go back, and she was still in the same job in the same branch of the bank doing the same work that she did while before she actually took the sabbatical. But that option is not there in a lot of companies. It's for both genders today. It's not there in the corporate world that we speak of, right? So rehiring is becoming like as if you're climbing a Mount Everest now. So what can be done to make sure that it becomes a lesser of a challenge of climbing a Mount Everest? And more importantly, the question is, Nirja, this is for you, since you worked in this space where with Jobs for Her, you're trying to enable women to come back into the organization and help them get the jobs when they're coming back. First is how can we reduce it so that it does not become like climbing an Everest? And second, why should organizations rehire people? What is the benefit for them?
So to start with, just because I took a break, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, my talent doesn't go away, right? So I brought something to the table when I was working that doesn't disappear. And all of us understand that today, it's not only, so we are all talking about the T-shaped individual. So we are not only talking about the vertical, we are also talking about the horizontal, and you need a holistic person in any kind of a role today, more and more so as, we are moving forward. And hence, it's not only the core competency and the skills, the technical skills or the domain expertise, but you really want a holistic individual, and it doesn't go away. I have skills. Just because I took a break, it didn't disappear. My talent still is there. And let us understand, when the person went on a break, in this case, the woman wanted a break. She went on a break for a reason. Be to look after the young child, or to care for a family member, or most of the times it also happens to be she's a trailing spouse, right? So she goes away because the husband got a transfer or moved countries, and so she moved. Can you imagine the kind of expertise she develops, the so-called competencies, the so-called soft skills, or whatever else that we talk about, that this woman develops because of looking after the young child or the parent, or in a new country trying to figure it out herself. So she may learn a new language. So the learning agility, the curiosity, the patience, and the problem solving, and all of that is needed to get a job done. Skill is just one piece. You can always learn, and you never know what skill is required for tomorrow. Overnight, things changed, business plans changed, business models changed, and all of us had to kind of reskill ourselves on a variety of things, and it was the easiest thing to do. But what actually enabled all of us to deliver was not the skill, but the aspect of our, maybe the emotional intelligence and all other competencies. So what I want to say is the woman doesn't lose out on that. In fact, she actually builds on that. And hence, it is important to even look at that talent. And since we are not getting, that talent through the regular route, just like if you want to, bring in gender diversity, we are, putting out all women hiring programs. We have to do, let's bring a woman on a career break. So this particular role is only for a woman on a career break, and things like that, just to ensure that we bring in that pipeline and, we allow them to get back. So that's one aspect why you should look at that talent. The second, how do you enable this, is the tested model that I have seen is for organizations. They kind of do a very high level interview for aptitude, fit for the organization culture kind of a thing. If it's an IT role, you're not going to sit and interview her on all the technologies that she did in the past and what might be coming in the future. Absolutely a waste of time, because you don't know what you're going to be working on for tomorrow. But an aptitude to say, okay, fine, she can learn. And I think, she knows what she knows well, and she can learn on the new things. And then put them through a boot camp, put them through a training program, which is relevant to what the organization skill sets are. And then you bring the person. So there are two ways you can probably bring them on a returnship, which means 6 months. You are on a live project, give live projects to them. And usually they buddy up this person with somebody else, just in case, there is a need for a help, and see how the person performs on the live project. And done well, you kind of hire them as a permanent employee. Otherwise, she has these skills where she can go and, apply somewhere else. Some companies actually take them, completely on their payroll. And I've actually heard of some organizations who actually, even though it's a returnship, they pay the same stipend or returnee, stipend as a regular employee's salary. So they, and all the other benefits of maybe a creche and things like that. So this is the model that's really, really worked. But the reason to bring them back is that I think she is much, much better equipped today than she was before she went on a break, because of the reasons that I also.
That actually makes it perfect for my next question to Augustus now. Thank you, Neeraja. So, Augustus, so following up from what Neeraja said in terms of, say, just because a woman took a break does not mean her skill is gone, but if she's traveled or if she's gone through, there's a lot more she's learned. Similarly, for men also, a lot of times, say, men actually quit their IT jobs, try to, with the dream of either bringing their own startup up or trying to achieve what they're passionate about, or for many reasons, but even they still have this problem of getting back into the work, right? Now, because of this, are we missing out on maximizing the talents that we get in the organization, or is there something that has to be changed in the hiring process or the way they're put into projects so that we can maximize on the talents of people? And I'm talking of this across all genders, not just for women.
Yep. Good question. Thank you, Ranga. My response to that is twofold. Okay. One is public policy. The other one is your own workforce policy. All right. Now, in terms of public policy, today you have the emergence, or you have not the emergence, you have the gig workers. All right. So the gig workforce addresses that question that you threw at me. But do we have the right policies, the right framework in place? One of the biggest debates around this is, social security. All right. Does the gig worker or the autonomous worker have the social net, to catch him when he falls, when he needs it? The answer is no. And some of the decisions that governments across the world have taken, I'm really not a great supporter of what they did. Like, for example, UK passed a legislation saying that, gig workers are now going to be regular workers. Now, that takes the entire, the entire power or the force of a flexible workforce away. All right, because gig workers need to have that flexibility. It's like when you play, when you're playing with blocks. Okay, so if you're a manager, you're able to use the right kind of blocks for a specific period of time, and then disband the whole thing. All right, so I don't think we have the framework in place in terms of how to use these work types, men or women. Two, unless organizations drive intrapreneurship and then further entrepreneurship, we are not going to grow. So internally, you need to drive that culture of intrapreneurship, which means that you're willing to take a risk for failure. So therefore, do we have the mindset, to get into what I would call a fail fast environment? Okay. So we need to have that appetite. And then, the startup climate, typically, right? You go, you try something out, it worked, it didn't work, it worked, fine. It didn't work, you leave it, junk it, and move on to the next thing. So we have to build that fail fast mindset in our people. Again, culture. Lastly, I spoke about the public policy approach. The public policy approach here is a bit different, and they are not able to see the value that this great opportunity will provide people. Now, we have our sabbaticals and things like that, but when people move out of a sabbatical into that wilderness to go and try something different, why? Because I don't have that opportunity within the organization, or the organization does not have that framework or the culture, to treat me or enable me to take that risk. And therefore, I'm going to go out and try it on my own, take that risk. Then comes the social net. Finally, I've had this experience of people who have, taken that leap of faith, like you have also done, Ranga, but you've been successful. But there are, many people who have failed. The statistics say it all, right? 1 in 20 succeeds, or sometimes 1 in 5, but it depends on what your idea is. See, out here in this particular instant, when I was mentoring some startups, which I continue to do, I don't see that, culture imbibed in them saying that, hey, look, I can take this risk, because there's a mental conditioning, right from school, college, and all these things, and then you're conditioned to take this job and all that, and then comes the commitment of a family or mortgage and all these kind of things. So there are a lot of impediments both for men and women. So you need to change that framework. Like, for example, you need to have a mortgage holiday for somebody who's going and doing that. All right. You need to incentivize some of these things. So that's where we are talking, with the government in terms of the public policy. What can we do to bring a framework, an ecosystem, which will encourage people to take this risk? Because once we do that, then there is more money, more investors who want to come in and put it in a startup. Like US has got this, they have a policy, for women-run enterprises. Okay, so therefore, if it is a government contract or from a large corporate, they have a particular policy which says that, look, if it is a women-run enterprise, you should have it. Or some contracts or jobs are, so to say, reserved for this category of people. Now, why is that affirmative action? Yes, but unless you do something like this, you're not going to encourage people to do that. And I wanted to bring one point totally unrelated to this, is one of the young ladies in my family, saw me speaking on one of these diversity seminars and said, why are you people talking so much about women and men? And in my college, by the way, she's a millennial. We never even had this, stereotypes, boys and girls, we used to mingle and have so much fun. It looks like you guys are creating a divide by what you're doing. And I think she had a point. Okay. Yeah. Are we beating this to such an extent that we are creating a divide, especially among the millennials and now the centennials who are coming in, who are digital natives? So that brings me to a point of fun in the workplace. All right. Why are you at work? You're there to work, but again, it's about having fun. And equity is also not about the loss of chivalry. You've got to be chivalrous. You've got to get up and open that door. Now, don't call me a stereotype, okay? But I think you need to also understand that equity comes from behaviors. Right. And behaviors are how you welcome the other person and make that other person feel special. All right. So whether it's about opening the door or providing a seat or holding the elevator door, so don't go back to the workforce and say, hey, we're all equal, so therefore I'm going to slam this door on you. No, continue being chivalrous. Right. Okay. And finally, I ask myself this question, and I ask business leaders this question. How would the world have been, if we had women leaders, if Churchill was a woman? If Hitler was a woman, would we have a better world, a better inclusive world? Would we have had lesser hate? I don't know the answers to that, but think about it. Historically, if we could have gone and changed that, we could have, of course, avoided a Holocaust. We could have been more inclusive. And therefore, I believe that women bring in that perspective of gender inclusivity. Thank you.
Thanks, Augie. And the one that you mentioned, that what a millennial telling you, why are you talking about it so much? You're creating a divide. Actually, it takes me back to the way we grew. So in my family, it's me and my brother. We didn't have any, female siblings, no sisters. So for my cousins, coming to my home was a great heaven because they were treated in a special way and we would be sidelined. And right from whether it was in our schools or whether it was at our family, we never really understood this divide between men and women. For us, it's a cousin, it's a cousin, it's a classmate, your friends, your human beings. But off late, so only when I actually entered into the corporate world and got this 1 or 2 years of experience, I started to see the divide and the way people were treated differently, right? So, Nirmala, I would love to follow up with a question to you now. Now, Nirmala is already smiling before I ask the question. Now, what have we done wrong to create this gender divide? Are there any examples where we have gotten it right? Are we losing out on it? Because see, because of these gender stereotypes that exists, even though, like say, I quit my job, I had an offer letter in hand as a fail safe, saying that okay, if in the last minute, if I get a cold feet, let me get back to the IT world. But still, I decided to plow through because my wife said, no, go ahead and try. 6 months into my business, I did not make a single rupee. I thought I'll get back into the IT world because I thought, okay, 6 months break is okay. After 6 months, if I go back, will I not get a job? I was scared of it because people did not appreciate the concept of a break for a man at that point. I'm talking of this about 8 years back. But my wife said that go ahead and try it for another 3 months. Even if you don't get a job, we'll open up a small store where you can put some bonda bhaji and everything, and then you can still make money. But you're passionate about something, try it. I had the support system with me. Luckily, things worked out for me. But not everyone is lucky that way, right? So what is, or how is this gender stereotypes affecting us as organizations and us as a community in maximizing the talent, creating a safe place? And if we are stopping people from experimenting, that means we are stopping people from learning. So what can we do to get it right?
It's a lot of work. It's definitely a lot of work. I mean, if I were to relate, and you're talking about millennials, and I have a daughter who's a millennial working, and the kinds of things they're saying, and we also work with groups of young women on building their leadership skills, and so I'm also connecting with the conversations that we have. So just to kind of give a context, the way I was raised, for example, education was terribly important in my family. I was questioned if I didn't do well, but at no point in my life did I hear that I needed to bring bread to the table. It was all about, you need to study well because, we need to get you married off to somebody who will accept you, or, and if something happens to him, you should be able to manage the family, so it was like an insurance plan that I needed to study and be ready to jump in if required. So what did that do to me? It didn't give me that I needed to succeed. I needed to be ambitious. There was none of those things. And the typical job, my mom thought I should be a teacher because she said, wherever your husband goes, there will be a school, so you can teach. Right? And you can come back with the children, you will have summer holidays. That was the ideal job. So what are you, and you don't build your career ambitions, like you put an airplane together, right? You're not building a model like that. It's everything that you absorb from your environment. So here I was, and I, for whatever reason, I did whatever I did and managed to go into business school and everything. And each time I was doing something, it was widening my horizon, making me question a lot of things. But I'm turning 60 this year, so I'm very ancient in that sense. So I came from a background where people were asking me, like, she's questioning, she wants to go to America to learn. I was doing things that were actually breaking the mold for that society, and it was almost like nobody will marry you now. Right now, you've broken the mold. You left house, you went and stayed somewhere. Now you went to America on top of all of this, right? So there were a lot of challenges that I seemed to be posing for no real reason. And I thought all of that was done with that. But guess what? About 7 months, no, it's not 7 months. Obviously, it was before COVID. I was in Hyderabad in an organization where they were talking about, high potential women being put through special training program, this, that. And during the break, one of the young women there, a mid-level team leader kind of a role, she came up to me and she said, you know what, I really want to do a PhD in my career life. So I said, so what's stopping you? You should do it. And she said, no, before I was doing it, my parents said, don't do a PhD, because if you do a PhD, we'll have to find you a PhD husband or higher. Therefore, you will not get married. Okay. And therefore, she was not allowed to do a PhD at that point. Now she's married. Her husband is not a PhD. So I said, have you discussed it with him? What are your plans? She said, I spoke with him and he said, go ahead and do it if you want to. But my mother says, you're newly married. Obviously, he will say yes. But once you have that PhD, things will change. So whatever I thought was over and done with is still prevalent, right? And this is what women are going back to. And here is a very key stakeholder in your life, your mother saying, things will change, and then, choose between your career and your life. And these are big decisions for a young 26, 27-year-old. And so she is confused. And then we are looking at this and saying women should make their own decisions. Women should be confident. Women should be this and that and the other. No man can be if they got the same messages, right? So we are talking to people and giving easy solutions, but without really checking it. So if you ask me, where is it all coming from? starts from birth. The pink and blue go to childhood or motherhood or whatever those, not childhood, motherhood or cradle, etc. The balloons will be blue and pink outside, right? Starting from there, the toys that you give them, the clothes that you buy for them, what you encourage them to do. Boys don't cry. Yeah, today some of us who've had these conversations are consciously trying to do it, but it still bothers. I have a young colleague at work who's got a young boy, and she works in the diversity space, and she says, I've told him, there's no difference, you should do this and that. And then she confessed to me, she said, Nimi, you know what, I want to discuss this with you. My son is whining all the time, and I feel, have I allowed him too much freedom to whine that he's whining? I am worried for him. He has to grow up and take. And I said, it's such a real problem, right? And when I was raising my daughter, I would say, yeah, women should be all equal. But when she did something that was not what I would have expected, my heart was going buck. Is this really what I should be getting her to do, right? So it is a real fact. It's nice for us to not acknowledge these fears and anxieties that we have. I think we need to put it out there and say, these are real. We need to work with it. And I think until we have candid conversations, I mean, for a long time, when I got married, just to share a little bit on that, only as a way to help us understand how these things come in the way of women. I was raised, like I said, in a very traditional setup, a typical middle-class Malayali family. And I had to listen to what my husband said, etc. And it just happened that my husband was a free-thinking person. He said, you are equal, and I don't. And incidentally, I married my junior, so we broke a mold there also. And he was he was less qualified, he was earning less, so multiple things broken there. So everything was like, and he was the kind who said, yeah, you need to do what you want to do. And I thought, no, he's just saying that because when I actually do it, things will change, right? Because that's what I've been told. And it took me the longest time for me to actually come to terms with the fact it was okay for me to have done whatever he said, and I could have done it. It took me a good 40-45 years to recognize that, to understand that it's okay. Whatever you think people are making judgments about you really don't matter, right? And today I'm able to tell people, look, forgiveness is easier than permission. Go ahead and do what you want to do. People will accept you for that, right? But that was not what I did for myself. So I think there is something in growing, evolving. When you get to the years that I have got to, you learned a few things in the process which tell you, a lot of things that you held as so sacrosanct really aren't so important. The world would have adjusted around you if you decided you wanted to be who you are.
Yes.
I think these are important messages that we need to give our boys and our girls.
Right.
Even for boys, you need to succeed, you need to be ambitious, you need to not show emotion, you need to be strong for your family. It's all still happening because, and even with women, I said we work with young women. Sometimes I ask them this question. I say, how many of you here would be comfortable marrying somebody who's earning less than you or less qualified than you? Honestly answer. How many hands do you think will go up?
Not many for
Hardly
sure.
any.
Right.
Hardly any. Because that's what, and I'm telling you, I meet so many young girls, and I'm collecting this as data. Let's say, another very interesting example, this young girl from the second tier, third tier MBA school. And, today it's okay for people to ask about boyfriends and girlfriends and all that. So I was also trying to be cool. So said, do you have a boyfriend? And she said, yeah, I do. And how serious are you? Just general casual conversation. And she said, yeah, it's okay. It's all right. But I don't think I'll marry him. So I said, why? And it was like, no, I would prefer to marry somebody from a better business school. So what are you saying here? Right? You're signing up for inequality right from the beginning. So I think it's a very deep-rooted thing. We need to think a lot about this. We need to talk candidly about this if change has to happen. So
I completely agree with you and the examples that you gave. In fact, to talk about it on a lighter note, I've actually used this specific example of, in today's generation, girls actually studying a lot, especially around what I see in my community and the relatives around me. So I've actually told a lot of my cousins who are not interested in studies, or my nephews, and, told them that, guys, if you don't study well, don't earn good, you're not going to get married. You want to get married, study well, because the girls are studying. Right. But
yeah.
on a if you look at the other side of it, it was a fantastic point that you mentioned that, you gave an example of that girl where you said she wants to from a better business school. Because of that also, what you're seeing is a lot of traditional businesses is going down the drain. Like women are not now, people even from the regional areas are coming in and studying from villages, they're coming into cities, getting educated, but none of these girls are willing to marry a farmer again, right? So there is a problem that we are creating, and as a society we are bringing in that divide amongst ourselves. So what's going to happen tomorrow is, if a farmer's son does not get married because no girl was willing to marry him because he still chose to be a farmer no matter what he did, probably he's not going to let his daughter go and study and pursue higher education because he fears that she'll also do the same thing, try to settle down in the city, right? So that brings up my next question to the all three of you. Now I want to really hear your perspectives. Now, while we talk of empowerment, while we talk of gender equality, gender equity as such, and we say that we got to work on it and make sure that we create an equal workplace, what are the cultural changes that we have to bring in very, very brief points, in terms of saying that, okay, let's do this something which is very specific, both as an individual and as a system. So what can it be done? Nirja, I would love to start with you, then Augie, and then Nirmala can bring in their points to it.
I think I will always keep, harping on the point that let's break this stereotype in every way that is possible. Of course, one in our own minds, and then, the larger organization and in the community. Going back to, when I had my daughter, and I said that she's 19, right? So 18 years ago, when I went back to work, which was after 10 months of maternity leave that I took, of course, and didn't want to go back. But people pushed me out of the house, saying that you're becoming really cranky at home, clinging onto the girl and not allowing anyone to, take care, and it's rusting over here. So I went back. And I was told, 2002 it was, we were going through a recession of sorts. So the role that I had when I went on a leave was no longer there. In fact, there was no budget for another role in that team. And hence my manager told me that he's spoken to the stakeholders and somehow got some budget and created one role for me. So it was almost like I had to be ever grateful for that. And he took, in some ways, verbal sign off from me that I will not take leave just because I have a young child, and I will not do half days. I will be as committed to work as I was prior to going on leave, performance, etc., etc. And I said yes. Of course I was going to, but then I said yes. But it was very hard for me, right? Because I didn't want to get back to work. People had pushed me out. And every day I would see my daughter, she had just woken up as I'm leaving. And I hated to leave. I would try to put her to sleep and then come. At least, some peace that, okay, she's sleeping, so it's okay for me to step out. My husband would be laughing. He said, you don't even turn the road, she would have woken up. And I had one resignation letter typed and kept, because on the days when I was feeling so bad, I wanted to shoot it off. But I remember my manager having taken that commitment, the gratitude that I had to express because he created this role for me, right? So I never sent that letter. So the person I'm talking manager is my manager's manager. Okay, the one who negotiated all this with me. My manager, a man, also had a baby at the same time as I had, a boy baby he had. And I observed this after I had returned to work, that there were many days when he wouldn't come to work. He would come late and he would call up and say, my son is not allowing me to come today. Okay, and hence I am at home. Now, I was not this kind of a person, then I was much more timid, shy. So quietly, I wrote down the dates when he didn't come. He gave excuses that his son is not letting him come and all of that. And after 3 months, I took that to my manager's manager who had negotiated all this with me and said, did you ever tell him this? You took all this from me, right, as commitment. Did you not ask him? And you allowed him to take so many days off. So I think that stereotype and that example of the other colleague who also quit from work because he wanted to spend time with his child, right? So that is one big systemic change that we need to bring in ourselves and within the organization and the rest of the community if we have to change any of this, to say that everybody, thinks and goes through the same, man, woman, doesn't matter. This is what Nimi also said. it is very hard. I mean, we heard of the story of Indra Nooyi, whose mother also asked her, "Did you get the milk? Go get the milk," when she wanted to announce that she got the role of the CEO. So, I think that's what has to change, I would say.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Nirja. So I think your story is similar to how my wife actually reacted. I'm pretty sure all women do react going back to the work after, especially if the first after the first child. So we also had to literally push my wife out, and I said, I'm going to work from home for 5 days so that my kid gets adjusted to my parents. So you can stay at office and work. And we had to literally push her out. My entire family, we pushed her out, saying that go to work, don't stay at home. So thank you for that lovely share, Dirja. Augie, to you.
Yeah,
Now,
I think that typical question, if somebody would marry a person, a male, if you didn't have, if he was less qualified and earning lesser money. And the other question you came up, or rather the comment or observation you made in terms of, would you marry a farmer, who and go back there? Well, if you look at it, let me answer this from a very social perspective. I think with the urbanization that is happening today, there has been a lot of change, right? Um, for example, go back even 20, 25 years, all right? What was or maybe 40, what was a typical Indian family? Okay, it was parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, and, an entire village, okay? Pan it to now, okay? It is just 3 or 4 people. So what happened over the last 3 or 4 decades is that we lost the knowledge of ages. We lost the knowledge, and that got replaced by Dr. Google. All right, like my child has a earache, and there would have been an aunt or a grand aunt or somebody at home who would have said, okay, you've got to do a home remedy. It is either garlic or coconut oil and things like that. But today, what would we do? Okay, today the millennial or the sentinel, even myself, is go to Dr. Google. Now, is that the knowledge that has passed through generations? Aren't we missing out? I think so. As a society, we have. Okay, and there is no replacement for it, and we are going to continue to speed towards 2050, where they are saying that maybe 70% of the world is going to be urbanized. Okay, so therefore, this person may have to wait until that happens, and get married, or we have to do the systemic change in mindsets, very systemic changes in mindsets, because it is not that I earn more than you or you earn more than me. I have seen families very happy, including my own seniors, women in leadership positions, whose spouses are probably in lower bands, or or a stay-at-home dad. I think we need to bring in that culture. Unless you are there to encourage that kind of acceptance, it doesn't happen. Today, how does it happen? It happens only because of love. I love her so much, so I don't mind doing that. But is that sustainable? I think it is. But if more and more people say that this makes business sense, you be the larger bread earner, and I don't mind taking this, but we are equals. Just because I bring lesser bread on the table does not mean I'm any less. Okay, so then we'll go back to that gender stereotype, where we will treat women differently than men, like I gave you that hotel example. So there's a lot, and I think it's a societal change that definitely needs to happen. Thank you.
thank you, Augie. Wonderful. Now, Nirmala, I would love to ask you a question on this, not obviously as a follow-up answer to this. So, Sumita is. So we'll move on to the Q&A while we continue the conversation, where uh, our audience has got a few questions for you, which I'll be asking you on this. So Sumita has a question. She says she wants to know what is the right balance in terms of percentage of employment between male and female. So she says in organizations where there is female count is more than 50%. She's seen a few organizations, but the management is thinking how to bring in male employees to create that balance. So she's asking, what is the balance plan that we need to have? Nirmala, you're on mute.
Yeah, it's a Saturday and there's a lot of noise around my house right now. Okay, so to say that, research basically tells us it's not about 50-50 necessarily, but between 40 to 60% of either gender in the organization is good enough for that balance to come in. Now, you can, but again, the important thing is not about the numbers. It's about, are they engaging? Are they being heard? Are we listening to them? That's the other part. You can have 60% women and 40% running the organization, right? That doesn't really make a difference. So are they in positions of influence? Are they being heard? Is an important aspect as well to check. So it's not just a number game.
Great. Perfect. Thank you. So now we have one more question. It says, the dear speakers, I'm part of the VFX industry and there's a big challenge for women to be hired in this industry, especially in the South. So what can be the solution? How can we increase, women getting more interested with the jobs in the VFX industry and actually probably studying it?
Can I just take a second to answer that? Maybe 30 seconds, and then sure, Niraja and Nimi have a lot. I don't want to miss the thought. That's why I wanted to go first. Age-old, trick over here is, to have an inspirational leader. Okay. And I think that is where we are lacking in building that pipeline. Okay. We're not doing enough there. There needs to be more people who can resonate with that young lady out there that, look, this is safer. Working nights means that your society is not going to look at you like this. Because when somebody asked me this question, when IT was in its nascent stage in the late 1990s and early 2000s, we had to do a lot of things to bring women into the workforce. All right. And this was about, employee transport, how safe was it, bringing in all that stuff. And then, even in the nights, if women have to work nights, we went and petitioned the government and said, hey, come on, give us that opportunity to have women working in the nights. And then the government of Karnataka took a progressive step and went and amended the Shops and Commercial Establishments Act and said, okay, IT and ITES industry, you can hire, you can get women to work nights. All right. So I think the regulatory framework is definitely one. The other one is something called the employer's duty of care. Okay, the duty of care is an ILO resoluted, mandate which every employer is supposed to do to demonstrate care. This could be in wellness, this could be in mental well-being, this could also be in terms of making the workplace safe. All right. So safety at work is a deterrent. So unless you go and say that, look, we have all this in place, okay, then they will come. And I know for a fact that if I walked into Chitrakala Parishat, close by, there are so many women artists, visualizers who are being trained. Where are they going? Why aren't they coming into your workforce? Have you gone and reassured them in your campus interview that, hey, this particular sector, is crazy because we are creative, and you'll have to work nights. You may not be able to go back home because we have that kind of a deadline. And therefore, we want you to take that risk. You've got to go and state that out. You may have done it, okay? But I think bringing a role model will drive home that point so much more faster and so much more effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Yogi. I think it's all about making sure that as an organization and as an industry, we share our story in the right way with the audience and inspiring them to come in and join this sector is what you're saying. Wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Augie didn't say it, but I'll say it on his behalf. For example, IBM is running the STEM for girls, right? Because we are seeing lesser number of girls. I know that VMware does something. Every other organization, because they believe that there is a need to build that pipeline from the school. And, those role models are important. Those basic skills to bring in that interest and curiosity is important at that age. And then, of course, the rest to say, okay, fine, now if you're interested, we will show you in the path, and there are people who can be there. And these are all the protocols that are available in companies to ensure that there is safety and whatever else. But that urge from within for that girl to say, okay, fine, this is also something applicable for me, and let me try it out, is something that you have to build as a pipeline. And hence I told you, right, if you don't see that many number of girls, then you have to go to schools, you have to go to colleges, and you have to build that pipeline through whatever ways you can, and bring in that curiosity and interest in that particular discipline.
Wonderful. Thank you, Neerja. So now Aditi has got a question. She says she's from the general insurance sector, and they also face huge challenges in being able to hire women in teams, like especially in legal claims, motor claims, and even in Salesforce. Now, I think this problem is similar to the one that you were answering, before. So now, what can be done here? Because even we see a lot of girls studying law. We see a lot of girls going into the legal framework. They are not being lawyers and there, but they're getting into the corporate law industry and probably sitting in offices. So what can be done for them to look at this industry in the general insurance sector and say that, okay, let me try this, let me not sit at home in spite of doing a law? Because I don't know personally, nothing against the way the law is studied and everything. I know there are a few very reputed law colleges where people go there and study to become lawyers. But on the other side, I've also seen people who probably went into arts because they could not get, into science, and just studied law because they thought someday it might come handy. Now, this attitude needs to change. So what can we do as an industry where people look at it and such people actually get the right resources, especially if they're looking to have women? How can that be enabled? The question is for Nirmala and Neerja. Both of you can answer this for me.
Okay, so how do we get more women? I think it's, like I said, it's a very complex thing. It's not one or two things that you do. It's multiple things. And like I said earlier, to me, a big change can happen when corporates take it on themselves to do it. Mm-hmm. Because corporates can bring in all of those changes. I think individual behaviors also change when corporates demand that change. I will go as far as saying that, because, when a corporate says these are the kind of behaviors that we will accept in the organization for the next 8 to 10 hours when you come in, and you practice that because you need to keep your job and get ahead. When you step out, hopefully you're not changing that easily, just like how society impacts organizations. And, so we are a microcosm. So from that angle, I think, organizations can drive a lot of behavior change and actually influence societal change. Societal outcomes are very, very dependent on, because we all constitute societies, right? And I'll tell you why I have this firm belief as well. This is a very personal example that actually made me believe in whatever I'm doing right now. A very unfortunate incident. A friend of mine lost his son in a road accident. And this young boy, he was doing his engineering. He died in Calcutta. The parents were in Delhi. I was in Bangalore. The minute I got the news, I felt the urge to go and be with the parents. So I I knew the body was coming the following morning. The parents had gone to pick up the body and everything. And I left from here on that morning from Bangalore, and I stayed in the airport because I knew they were coming by a later flight. And when I was there were many people from his company that had come to help with the process. Obviously, it's a long process and they needed help with all of that. And I was there with them. First time I was meeting a lot of these people, but I knew they were all there for this reason. So I went and introduced myself because I knew just the family. And during the course of the day, I was in 2 or 3 different cars going from the airport to the crematorium, from there back to their house. I was kind of joining groups of people that were doing this. And every time I got into a car, they would all pull their seat belts, whether they were in the front seat or the back seat. And I watched this, and I was also doing this. And I said, okay, this was an accident. So it's all fresh in everybody's mind. They're all following safety rules. And I also noticed that by the 3rd car that I was sitting in, without anybody nudging me, I was also doing the same thing, right? And then I asked one of them, I said, is it compulsory in Delhi? And this was a few years ago. Is this compulsory in Delhi that people have to wear their seatbelts at the back? I said, no, it's not compulsory in Delhi, but our company insists, because of which we all do it, because of which our families do it. And I said, because of which I am doing it in one day, in the course of one day. Right? So this is the power that companies can have for making changes. And I think we really need to let leaders know that they carry so much clout. And like Augie was saying, companies like an IBM or a Wipro or a Infosys or any of these large companies have so much goodwill that they can influence governments and policies. Public policy can be influenced by them, right? So to me, the solution lies in corporate leaders actually taking this on. And if they can do it, because right now that's really not a full engagement, it's a lot of, I think, verbal commitment. The minute they start, actually doing it is when we will start to see change.
Wonderful.
So
thank you.
Add on to that, two examples. One is, I do a few sessions for this institution called Modi University of Management. It's an all-girls management school somewhere in Rajasthan. And, the dean has been talking to me to say, okay, fine, you need to do these sessions. But, in private, he's also told me that the parents, usually the fathers of the girls, will come. And the first question that they will ask is, tell me which companies come here for placement and what are the kind of salaries that come. And hence, the dean will sell whatever from the data and statistics of the past. And then he says, 2 years later, they would have got the placement, but the girl wouldn't have joined. Because, the father would have married the daughter off, the same father who asked for this data, to a man who's probably working in a similar company with the same designation, with the same kind of a salary. Okay. So what he's saying is, doesn't matter. I mean, we can try, we have to do, but doesn't matter. I'm still keeping track of these girls, where they are going, because they are like the ambassadors of our college and they have the required education. And so whichever city they are in, he's trying to build some kind of cohorts with other alumni who have joined corporates and get these girls to be in touch with those women in those companies, so that at some point in time, there will be some interaction, some intervention, and there will be a mindset change and the girl can go and work or, do something more substantial. So that's one example. And the other one is this lady who is a mentor with me on the portal that I mentor at, called Aspire for Her, for young girls in the age group of 18 to 25. So she comes from a Marwadi family. Okay, so usually, and sorry, but it's that typical, notion that Marwadi girls don't really go out and work. Max, they'll be probably in the family business. And hence, she's also, hugely successful in terms of her education. But when she got married, family business, husband's business. And then she broke a stereotype somewhere down the line to say that I want to run something of my own. And the story that she narrates. So it's okay, all of us go through this journey. I also was a very quiet, timid, meek, shy girl. My parents wanted to get me married, but for whatever reason, I started work and then I've stayed on, right? But wherever you are, at whatever place you are today, can you create that impact for yourself and for the rest around you? If we all can start thinking in those lines, it doesn't have to be at a scale. The scale will come. But if you can impact even one person, that's good enough is what I feel, because the ripple effect will be really, really much.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I think the answer to, there were a couple of them who are saying that it's very difficult to hire women into our sector or, this particular jobs that we're looking for. I think the answer to that is very simple. That if you want women to work for your organization, you've got to get early into their education system, show them how safe the place is and how fruitful is it to work for your organization and the job opportunities that you've got, and bring that systematic change so that it actually works. Right. That's wonderful. And probably this is the last question for today. Nav Kishle is asking this. He says, what are the 3 specific behavioral change in the household, society, or school that can bring in the change in the mindset? I would quickly, this question is for all 3 of you again. Very quickly, the 3 skill sets according to you.
Three skills, I'm just thinking, to me, your behaviors are driven from your thoughts.
Right.
So if you are able to think equal, I think many things will just fall in place on its own. But for you to think equal, you need to build that awareness, because, it's not that we intend to be discriminatory. Many times we do it unintentionally. Whether in organizations or at homes, oh, she's a girl, she must be weaker, so ask the boy to carry the suitcase, or, things like this. So whoever is healthy enough to carry it should carry it, and whoever is fit enough to carry should carry. So can we get to that? It's going to be hard, because it's ingrained over so many years eons of time, it is going to happen very, very slowly. It's not that, these three behaviors and things will change. I think at least that's how I feel at this point.
Right. Perfect. Thank you.
And a lot comes from observation, is what I wowould say. You can preach as much as you want to, but I think the child especially learns a lot from observation. A lot of it is unspoken, but if there are friends of mine who say, my child only shops at all these high-end malls and the brands, and does not. Then I ask, what do you do? What is the bag that you are carrying, right? I've seen it, forever. I've always been an Ola Uber person. My daughter has always seen me booking an Ola and Uber, whenever I have to go anywhere. And so when she was much younger, even to go to, I was living in Alsur in Bangalore, even to go to the next road, she was like, Ma, have you booked the Ola? Because she has seen me doing that. She has never seen me walking. She's never seen me getting to a bus. So I think if you want to change, I think preaching doesn't really, you can, but I think practicing is what, will bring about the change.
Perfect. Thank you. Augie, your thoughts?
It starts from the home, and I think you've got a great, you yourself are a role model, in breaking that gender stereotype. Starts from the home, and sorry to say, it starts from the bathroom. When there's a woman in the house, learn to keep the seat down. Okay, these are probably small things, but I will tell you this, that unless you drive that, into our children today, otherwise they're going to be conditioned by the environment. And the environment continues to stay divided, continues to be divisive, and continues to be having certain retrograde practices. So unless you condition them at home, that change is not going to happen. So to me, be sensitive. The other thing is be resilient. And of course, be very quick to adapt, allow the other person, the other gender to also pay and foot the bill. Why I should, dive for the bill as a male, though I love to do it, but typically, look at some of that mindsets, okay?
Right.
You have a woman out there and you want to make sure that that's good, make that person feel good, celebrate that moment. That's the point I'm bringing in here. Celebrate that moment, celebrate that difference, celebrate that diversity, and have fun at work, have fun at home. But fun does not mean tapping somebody on their back, okay, or the bottom, but fun in its true, clean sense. And that's what we're all here. So enjoy every moment, celebrate that moment, and be sensitive. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, all three of you. It was wonderful. I think just to add on to what you said, I think the whole point of equal opportunity should not be about equal opportunity. It should be about equality and the equity, as what we said at the beginning of the session. And it definitely starts from home, where both genders are taught to respect each other, love each other in the pure and the nice way, so that we don't get into this whole battle of who is greater or what can I, which gender is there. And hopefully we'll move towards a future where we don't have to do diversity hirings. We actually go ahead and do hiring because people are capable of it, and we still achieve those numbers in the right way and get away from this whole reservation policy that we have bought in to ensure that we get a better workplace. Right? Thank you. It was wonderful listening to all three of you. I think as a moderator, I learned a lot. I'm sure all our audience learned a lot from this. It's been a great pleasure talking to the three of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rangaraj. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
It was a good Saturday morning for me.
So, Divya, now over to you for the vote of thanks. And then, so I'm done. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. I think the entire chat and the WhatsApp is going gaga over all the discussions you've had. I think you've triggered a lot of thoughts, and it has been very insightful for many of us. So I think the statements you've made can be really published as quotes, and I think you'll go viral for all the statements you've made today. So we really, really look forward to connecting with you a lot more and having a lot more sessions. So thank you all to all the participants and to all the audience that we have had. In fact, you've kept us on our our toes with all the comments and thoughts that's been pouring in the chat as well. So this session has been great because of all of us coming together, and for us to do this better, we request your support and do join us on the WhatsApp groups to ensure that we're connected and you're aware of all the sessions that's coming up as well. Thank you all. Thank you, Nirmala, Nirja, Augustus, and Ranga for taking this entire discussion like a breeze.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Devi. Thank you all. Thanks a lot for your time. Have a great weekend. Hopefully, we'll all see you soon with a few more ideas, few more thoughts, and more wonderful speakers. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.